Hey everyone, I'm Albert Boris. Wave 3 of the Mairo Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass has, after nearly 4 months of wait, finally been announced, slated for a release date of December 7th, 2022. There are a lot of reasons to be hyped for this one, as it's safe to say that it will probably end up being one of the most quality waves of the entire Booster Course Pass, with none of the tracks looking to be mediocre. Perhaps one of the biggest reasons I got hyped after watching the trailer though was the fact that it subverted our expectations regarding leaks. Long story short, after Wave 1 was released, data miners were able to figure out all of the console prefixes associated with each track, and they lined up perfectly when Wave 2 announced. And shortly after that release, data miners were able to gather music prefetches for around 11 upcoming tracks, whose file names also lined up with the prefix leak. Or so we thought. When Wave 3 was first teased back in September, it looked like so, as 2 of the datamine tracks did appear. However, when Wave 3 was announced in its entirety, not only was the track order slightly altered, they even decided to swap out the datamined Waluigi Stadium for Maple Treeway, which was originally supposed to come for Wave 6. Effectively, this means that predicting the rest of the Booster Course Pass from now on might not be as easy as we thought it would be, since we can't fully rely on the prefix leak anymore, which will undoubtedly make it more interesting. So I thought, why not redo my predictions for the last half of the Booster Course Pass, waves 4 to 6. With all that being said though, I will set up some rules for me. I don't think the leaks are completely nullified. Even if Wave 3 didn't end up exactly like we thought it would, it was still fairly close to both the prefix and music leaks. So I won't move around the track prefixes too much. And even if I will, I don't believe they're gonna switch around the placements of the tracks from Mairo Kart Tour, that is, the cities and unlabeled ones. Partly because those remain the same for Wave 3, but also because I think the leaked spots for those simply fit either way. And lastly, I also believe that the number of tracks from each game has already been set in stone since Wave 1, for practical reasons, so no more N64 or 3DS tracks, unfortunately. But with all that being said, let's get started with Wave 4. Wave 4 will be the first wave to release in 2023. Now, even though Wave 3 is looking to be absolutely crazy in terms of courses, I do have the most certain feeling that Wave 4 will take a step back in that regard, seeing as it will open up a new row of cups. Kind of like how the Shell Cup always has in the past. The Fruit Cup is the first of these cups, which will open up with a city track, Amsterdam Drift in particular. Even excluding the fact that it was data mined to be here, it has the perfect vibe to open up the year. Compared to the other city tracks, this one is much more mellow and relaxing with the farmland setting, so I think it's an appropriate track for opening up the year. The fact that you go through a tulip field in one of the versions proves this even more, as flowers in general are one of the most iconic symbols that spring is coming. No doubt, this will be the opening track. The second track was originally data mined to be a wheat track, but I'm actually gonna move it down a spot because I believe Course 2 will see our first GameCube track of the entire Booster Course Pass. Since we didn't get any Double Dash courses in the first half of the DLC, I think it's rightfully deserving that we're getting it as early as possible now, and GCN Mushroom Bridge would be a perfect track for this spot. It's relatively simple and chilling, but still interesting enough that it deserves another remake, especially after how the DS version removed all the interesting aspects of it. The third track of the Fruit Cup, I believe, will be Wii DK Snowboard Cross. Or rather, I'm actually 99% certain it will be. This is because there's an internal file within the game that was data mined back when Wave 1 released, which displays the Booster Course banner but with unreleased tracks, and one of them is DK Snowboard Cross right here. And in any case, I think this is a sensible track to remake. It's a fan favorite for many, and it already has a remake in Mairo Kart Tour, so everything is pointing towards its inclusion. And as the third track in this cup, it could be a nice warm-up to more complex tracks, while still being easygoing. Because truth be told, those are the vibes this track gives. And then we get to the final track. According to the prefix leak, a Nitro/non-city tour track is gonna end the Fruit Cup. Now, I'm not going to go too deeply into this matter. I already made a separate video where I predicted all of the unlabeled tracks from Mairo Kart Tour data mines, including the remaining 3 city tracks, and I don't want this video to become too long, so if you want to know more in depth about them and why I think it will be these tracks specifically, make sure to check that video out. In any case, I believe the Fruit Cup's final track will be the data mined Yoshi's Island track, because out of these Nitros, it sounds like it's gonna be the most mellow from the theming, and Yoshis also eat fruits, so it can act as the mascot of this cup. It's certainly not ominous Outback, that's for sure though. And that's the Fruit Cup. Coming up next is the Boomerang Cup. If Sydney Sprint wasn't in Wave 2 already, I would have predicted it here. Not only for symbolism, but also because it kind of fits Wave 4 as another slightly more simple city track. According to the music leak, it will instead be Singapore Speedway. Wait, let me quickly check my Waves 3 to 6 prediction video. But I fear that this overrated track will make it before Vancouver does. Well, I wasn't wrong. On the surface, this track looks really crazy, and it is to an extent, so Wave 5 might have seemed more fitting, but on the other hand, I think it was wise to put it a wave earlier. Because under that nightlife chaos hides a rather simplistic design with not that many turns, so in all honesty, that combination makes this particular placement near perfect, and I'm keeping it that way. Next up, I believe we will be seeing the final DS track of the entire Booster Course Pass, Delfino Square in particular. I know, you guys probably want Luigi's Mansion or Airship Fortress. I do too, however, for me personally, they only work if they're the final tracks of their respective cups, with their incredibly edgy atmospheres. But alas, all of the 4 tracks in the Booster Course Pass left are Nitros or Cities, except for this one, which I'm not moving. So I'm picking the only other remaining fan favorite left from this game, which is much more mellow and would undoubtedly fit Wave 4 as well. But obviously, we can't just have mellow courses in Wave 4. Wave 1 had probably one of the craziest tracks in the entire DLC, and Wave 2 had a snow track, despite releasing in the summer. You see where I'm going. So the third track of this cup should be GBA Sunset Wilds. Quite possibly one of the most ambitious classic courses in the entire series. Now yes, as a desert, Wave 5 might on the surface seem more fitting, however I think it would be kind of repetitive if both Waves 2 and 5 had an aesthetically similar desert track, especially in the exact same spots according to the music leak. So we're gonna give it the Maple 3-way treatment and bring it back earlier. It's also one of my personal favorite tracks of all time, with how the time of the day slowly changes from sunset to night every lap, so it will kind of serve as the crazy track in this wave. The final track of Wave 4 is actually another city track according to the prefix leak, and the music leak is pointing towards it being Los Angeles Laps. Now this might actually be one of the kingliest track placements in the entire DLC, in my opinion. Out of all the city tracks, this one is by far one of the most ambitious ones, with all 3 variants taking place in a completely different area. In fact, there isn't even a shared starting line. This implies it will probably be a section course, and for that reason it makes all the sense for it to be an ending track as opposed to the lap-based cities prior. And it also fits as the final track of Wave 4 in particular as a kind of small teaser for the summer season, being a summer-themed track. I honestly can't believe how well it fits here, and I hope they don't fully scrap the prefix leak for this track's sake. And that was Wave 4. It definitely has potential to be a great one, even if I would be surprised if it exceeded Wave 3. I'm gonna take a wild guess and say it will release on April 11th, which doesn't say much considering I've never correctly predicted release dates, but it's there if it does happen. Next up is Wave 5, containing the Feather and Cherry Cups, and this is where it gets interesting, because the Feather Cup happens to contain 2 city tracks, but neither actually exist yet in Mairo Kart Tour. However, 3 cities have been data mined for the game, so it's not that difficult to narrow it down. I believe the Feather Cup cities will be Athens Avenue, because feathers are commonly associated with Greece, and Madrid Maze is the ending track, mostly because it just doesn't fit anywhere else, I think. So those are the cities. What about the middle 2? According to the prefix leak, there was to be a Wii track, and even though we can't fully go by that anymore, this particular Wii track would undoubtedly fit incredibly well here. Koopa Cape. Just like with DK Snowboard Cross, it was data mined through the banner leak, and being one of the biggest fan favorites from Wii, it would be a missed opportunity to not include it. It has the perfect vibe for this spot. It's thematically easygoing, yet ambitious, and is also one of the most difficult tracks from Mario Kart Wii, and I think those are pretty valuable qualities for one of the first tracks in Wave 5, as it shouldn't get too edgy while still being interesting. Even if unfortunately, it will probably be a visual disappointment, like with all the other DLC tracks featuring lots of grass and cliffs, but I digress. For the third track, I think we'll be getting our second and final SNES track. Yeah sure, I don't want it either, but not only does the prefix leak point towards it, it might have already been leaked in the most bizarre way. Not through the music leak, not from the banner leak, but from an in-game advertisement leak. Let me explain. So in Wii Coconut Mall, you have a bunch of different advertisements plastered across walls and fences. Nothing unusual. But one of the advertisements also happened to spell out Vanilla Lake. and this isn't the only track with this kind of foreshadowing as well, so I'm pretty positive we'll get Vanilla Lake. Imagine if they could combine the two variants of this track. You start off with Vanilla Lake 1, but as time goes by, the center starts to melt, transforming into Vanilla Lake 2. That would sure make it stand out to GBA Snowland, which aesthetically already looks very similar. If that doesn't happen though, we'll just stick to Vanilla Lake 1, since it's slightly more distinct visually. Which concludes the Feather Cup predictions. The Cherry Cup is up next. Unlike the previous cup, this one has only one city track, and it has been data mined to be Bangkok Rush, which is a mildly fitting course for this cup. Personally, I do think it might have been better off as the Feather Cup finale, as the atmosphere feels a little more climactic than the other cities, but it's fine as the Cherry Cup opening as well. At this point, we're getting close to the end of the Booster Course Pass, and the vibes this track gives are exactly that, which mildly fits the further to last cup. Following that, I predict we will see a GBA track. Which one though? That's an excellent question, because it hasn't yet been data mined like Sunset Wilds. However, people tend to guess on one of the following 5 on the basis of being in Mairo Kart Tour or being data mined to arrive to it at a later date. Riverside Park, a Bowser Castle, Luigi Circuit, Cheep Cheep Island or Yoshi Desert. So let's eliminate them one by one. Yoshi Desert would aesthetically look incredibly similar to GC and Dry Dry Desert, which is already in the game, so that one's obviously out. We haven't had a single retro Bowser Castle track in Mairo Kart 8, and I doubt that's about to change. Cheep Cheep Island would feel thematically repetitive since we already have a bunch of beach or tropical tracks in the Booster Course Pass, including Bangkok Rush right before, which also disqualifies Riverside Park, which in addition to being tropical, would be too easy for Wave 5. That leaves us with GBA Luigi Circuit, which is definitely not a track I would want to see make a return, but sometimes you need to pick the most thematically distinctive track in relatively to the rest of the cup, as it's been with all the other cups in this DLC. It's even more important now because I believe it will be followed by GC and Daisy Cruiser. It's a summer themed track, which naturally fits Wave 5, but it's still distinct enough from the other tracks I've predicted in this wave that I think it's fine. Something I don't think would have been the case if Cheep Cheep Island was right before this. And as the third track, it would kind of fit as the calm before the storm, with its calm yet exciting vibe. The storm of which being another unlabeled track. I believe it will be the data mined MAB DK, which I assume will be a DK course of some kind. And that is Wave 5, which I believe releases August 21st, 2023. And so we get to the 6th and final wave. Out of all the waves, this one is no doubt gonna end up becoming one of the most interesting, because believe it or not, but according to the prefix leak, we're getting 3 unlabeled Nitro tracks, instead of just 1. And no, I don't think they're just placeholders, because there are enough data mined Tour Nitros that it perfectly aligns with the Booster Course Pass. Let's just toss the ones in the Acorn Cup quickly, since I don't have much to say about them that wouldn't take over 2 minutes. Speaking of which, the Acorn Cup. The city will, no shocker, be Vancouver Velocity. On first thought, it does seem odd to put one of the earlier city tracks released in Tour in the very final wave. But not only is it a fan favorite city course, which could be a selling point for Wave 6, but thematically it makes so much sense as well. Acorns are associated with autumn, and this track screams autumn, so it couldn't have ended up in a better spot. Now the second track in the Acorn Cup was supposed to be Maple Tree Way according to the music leak, before it was moved up to Wave 3. It replaced what was gonna be the debut of the first GameCube track, Waluigi Stadium, which was data mined for both the music and banner leak. And honestly, I have the ever so slightly feeling that Nintendo intentionally teased us with this track to come early, only to then potentially put it in the last wave, as a way to keep fans on their toes. So I don't know, I think we'll probably have to wait an entire year to play it. Which leaves us with the Spiny Cup now, and out of all the cups, this one is the easiest to predict. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if I'm 100% right on this one. The only track I might be wrong on is the unlabeled track, which by the way I think will be the leaked bathroom track, because it's such a wacky concept that I think it would just mesh well with the Spiny Cup's potential craziness, being the finale of the Booster Course Pass. The city track for this cup has not yet been released in Mairo Kart Tour, however data miners have pointed towards an Orlando track making its debut at one point, and I think it would fit the Spiny Cup incredibly well. Thematically, I always had the impression that Orlando is a chaotic city, with Disney World and all that. And the city course for the final cup of the Booster Course Pass should be chaotic in my opinion, so I'm putting it here without hesitation. For the second track, we possibly have our final GameCube track in the Booster Course Pass. Now this one is pretty obvious, assuming the prefix leak is true. I'll give you a hint. Remember how DS Peach Gardens was the second track of the last cup in a row in both Mario Kart DS and Wii? Remember how it still is that in the Booster Course Pass? What what track from the GameCube received a similar treatment in Double Dash and 7? You'll find the answer if you go to Wii Coconut Mall and check out the very specific advertisement. So yeah, probably no DK Mountain, so Dino Dino Jungle it is. Which leaves us with the last remaining course, which according to the prefix leak at least, is the last of the 6 Wii tracks. We all know it, Wii Rainbow Road will end off the Booster Course Pass. It just makes sense. Ending off with a Rainbow Road is a no-brainer, and the Wii version in particular has an almost melancholy and credits-ish atmosphere to it, which could be a pretty impactful element for the last track. It's also one of the most difficult and mind-bogglingly hard Rainbow Roads ever made, and likewise, the Spinny Shell is a representation of the most devious foe every master Mario Kart player has, as it targets first place, so that just makes it even more obvious we'll be getting Wii Rainbow Road here. And that, my friends, are my updated predictions for the last half of the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass. But what are your predictions for waves 4 to 6? If you like this video, then please make sure to like, share and subscribe to my channel as I talk about everything Mario related. With all that being said, I'm signing off now.